I don't think it would take any stretch of the imagination to say that Psycho is not just one of the greatest horror films ever made, but one of the greatest films ever made, period. It's got innovative cinematography, dynamic characters, surprising twists and turns, creative editing, sharp performances, enthralling dialogue, and unyielding suspense. But what if I told you that 1983's Psycho 2 had everything I just listed and in spades? If you love the first film, you need to give this often forgotten sequel a chance. Yes, many people today don't even realize that there was a sequel to Psycho, despite it opening at number 2 at the box office, missing out on the top spot justifiably due to Return of the Jedi. For those who remember, they often cast it off. The sheer idea of a Psycho 2 is crazy, right? Without Alfred Hitchcock to direct, you'd be forgiven for assuming that this was nothing more than a cheap cash-in, the likes of Jaws 3 or Exorcist 2. But I think this is one of the most overlooked and underappreciated films that I've ever seen, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is one of the best sequels ever made. Now, in 1982, Robert Bloch actually did publish a sequel to his original novel, but the script for this film is entirely original, and I'm honestly thankful for that. I haven't read the book, but from what I've heard, it wouldn't have really made for a good film. This film is directed by Richard Franklin, who was actually a student of Hitchcock's, and written by Tom Holland. No, not Spider-Man Tom Holland, different Tom Holland. Obviously. The film stars Meg Tilly, as well as Anthony Perkins and Vera Miles returning from the first film. One of my favourite directors, Quentin Tarantino, claims he actually prefers this film over the original, which is quite the statement. However, he has stated that he's not a huge Hitchcock fan in the first place. The crew consists of some particularly talented artists. The director of photography is Dean Cundey, who worked on some of my favourite films, Halloween, The Thing, Back to the Future, and Jurassic Park. We've also got music composed by Jerry Goldsmith, who worked on Alien, which is another one of my favourites. And his work on this film goes a long way to build the right kind of tone, managing to compose a handful of great pieces without drawing too much from Bernard Herrmann's iconic score from the first film. Right out of the gate, the film opens with the iconic shower scene from the first film. This is bold, but I think it shows confidence and proclaims that this is in fact a sequel and will continue the original story threads organically. This actually got me pretty hyped when I first saw it. We were jumping right in, it was quite provocative. The first scene shows Norman being released from a mental institution, now deemed mentally sound. Marion Crane's sister Lila Loomis protests his release to no avail. Norman takes up residence in his old home behind the Bates Motel and starts working in a nearby diner. The film really takes time to endear you to Norman's cause, showing you that he really wants to assimilate into society and live a normal life. At the diner, he meets a young waitress named Mary. We find out that Mary is having boyfriend troubles, which causes her to knock over a plate at work, but Norman takes the fall for her. The film could have easily taken the cheap approach of having Norman go straight back to his old ways, but it tries something more interesting, giving Norman a focused character arc. All of this is shown in the next scene when, after work, Mary's boyfriend breaks up with her over the phone, leaving her with no place to stay. Norman first offers to call her a cab, and then asks if she has parents to stay with, before offering her a place at his motel. This reminds me of when we first meet Norman in the original film. Conversing with Marion, he seemed odd and introverted, but he was likable. Smartly, the film not only writes out Mary's parents physically, but also emotionally, meaning that in this scene, we learn that Mary is a loner character, just like Norman, and their relationship becomes the emotional core of the film, and what is so great about it. You find yourself really caring about them. It helps that the actors have great chemistry. Meg Tilly is really likable as Mary. She isn't dumb, she seems suspicious of Norman, but empathetic of him too. Anthony Perkins is fantastic in this movie. He brings a lot of authenticity to the screen. He is great at making Norman a sympathetic character. As the film goes on, he starts to experience paranoia, seeing things and believing he is getting weird messages from his mother. He becomes afraid, and he really doesn't want to go down the same path he did before. Mary becomes a friend, spending time with him and consoling him as he returns the favor. I won't spoil the film, but from this point on, it offers smart twists and turns, as well as interesting and dynamic character moments for Norman, Mary, and Lila, who returns to the narrative towards the second half of the film. The pace is slow, like the original, building and building, but once you get to the third act and things start unraveling, it's truly exciting and fun to watch. I own this on Blu-ray, and it holds up every time I watch it. I truly don't know how anyone could think this is a bad film. Obviously, it was controversial to make this movie, but I don't know what the discourse surrounding it would have been like back in 1983, honestly. Did people want Norman Bates to be a Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees-like character? Maybe. They could have easily made this a popcorn slasher. And while the film isn't exactly as sophisticated as the original, it does take a more human and nuanced approach, earning its status next to the original. It could never have been as iconic as the first, but how often is a sequel this good? It took risks, and they paid off, because you can tell that the people behind it really cared about making a great movie, and they made one.